men's first and the women's in second. That will be the final race of our 4-race program here today.
You are correct. Yeah, the college men's race is second on the agenda, and first up it's Trinity College again, Melbourne University, and the champion Sydney Women's College Cruise.
Is there a pause button or an off button? Can we turn them? Not sure. Nothing to.
Right, we're in a holding pattern here. The first race, as we mentioned, the women's college regatta over the 2-kilometre course. Both crews are out on the water. They'll be going down past the point at which they'll start, and will then be in control of the marshals.
So a couple of shots on screen before of the crews doing some practice starts up behind the start line. So they would have rode up there a little while ago, done a warm-up row beyond the start, and we'll be starting to prepare. Of course, the first few strokes can be so critical in these one-on-one races.
Richard, yeah, there was a coin toss conducted yesterday. The crews get to choose which side of the river they're on, and Melbourne at Trinity College in the women's race have chosen the north side, Sydney on the south side. What would be the difference between those 2 points as we're looking at the screen at the moment?
Well, for the 2,000-metre races, the first section is actually relatively straight as they pass under the Punt Road Bridge, but the first bend is effectively to the left, which you'd expect to be to the advantage of the south side crews, and then the river then curves back the other way anyway. So it evens out over the course of the race, but it is, as we'll possibly see in these races, often the crew that can get themselves out in front in the early stages, the one who can hang on to get the win. So the opening strokes are critical, and not sure who actually won those coin tosses or who chose the north side or the south side, but that's how they've ended up in this race. It'll be the Melbourne crew on the north bank, and the Sydney or the St Paul's College crew on the south side of the Yarra. And that is the bridge is right here. Brendan, that it must be the Punt Road Bridge there.
The Hoddle Street Bridge,
as it's
sometimes known, connects Punt Road and Hoddle Street.
So called, I learnt a little while ago, because there used to be a punt running over that part of the river, hence the name Punt Road.
Ah, I did not know that. There's some tremendous history. We can see the other crew coming under the Cremorne Railway Bridge, a series of bridges that stretch all the way down the Yarra, some rail only, some pedestrian only. Now the Morell Bridge, which for 100 years carried traffic, is now just pedestrians and bikes. The Swan Street Bridge, and then all the way down to the famous Princes Bridge in front of the main railway station, the heart of Melbourne.
Just after the finish, the crews will finish right out to, we get a fantastic view here from the Melbourne Uni Boat Club boardroom of the finish line here, right in front of the rowing sheds here on Boathouse Drive.
So the crews at the moment just going through a bit of stroke calibration. Is that the way to describe it?
I was wondering, in fact, if that might be a start, Brendan. I think the crews, they're rowing pretty aggressively here. I reckon they are just underway. We missed the shot of the start itself, but these two crews are off and racing, it looks like. So just a couple of minutes after start time here, and we are underway in the women's college race between Trinity College of Melbourne, who are closest to the camera side of the course, and then St Paul's College from Sydney in the call that the maroon colours on the far side, the south side of the Yarra. Well, have I misinformed you again? I think these are the men's crews waiting for their
cut away.
race.
I think the men's crews much further down the river. Just lost the shot there for a second, but no doubt we'll be back momentarily.
Yeah, so they're the men's crews. So it's Trinity and St John's. It will be the two men's college crews. The race at 9:30. It's about 11 minutes away. And they're currently proceeding up to the start line. They will be preparing for the race, as you suggested, Brendan. But here are our two crews on the course, and it has been a pretty bright start indeed to that Trinity College combination from Melbourne on the right of the screen, and about to get the advantage of that first bend here on the Yarra as well.
In terms of right-of-way here, Richard, who has the right-of-way? Because Trinity has the boat length plus advantage.
So the rules basically require you to stay in your allocated lane unless the crew can get enough of a lead to cross without impeding the other crew. That's a very subjective measure, but we have some very smart boat racers out there who'll be watching this. But in this case, it won't really trouble the Trinity crew because they've got the inside lane in any case as the river bends around to the right-hand side. So they will, I'd imagine, cut that corner fairly closely. And we'll see just how the crew from St Paul's tries to follow them around.
St Paul's on the right of camera in the maroon zooties, as those rowing uniforms are called. Trinity on the left in the bottle green, which looks a little navy blue from this longer shot.
So the crew from Trinity, this race has been dominated by Ormond College from the University of Melbourne for the past decade. I think since 2013 they have won every edition of this race. But they were beaten here on the Yarra back in early May by Trinity, who therefore won the right to be the Melbourne representative crew, and they look to be, at this stage at least, set to continue this Melbourne winning streak. The crew from Trinity College, who are having their first crack at the Australian boat race. And unsurprisingly, none of the athletes in that crew from Trinity College have raced in this event before. We should run you through the names in the crew as they make their way down through about the halfway mark of the race now. So the crew from the bow seat is Lulu Detmold-Cox, the two-seat Natasha Madden, Mietta Passon, Jazz Wiley, Annabelle Maloney, Charlotte Newman, Ellie Campbell in 7-seat is the captain of the crew, Lily Wallace in the stroke seat, and Bella Boffa steering them now through the next of our bridges on the course. And that's the Swan Street Bridge, of course, and heading down towards the finish line pretty quickly already, Brendan.
Yeah, it is the Swan Street Bridge, as you mentioned, and plenty of people in the background enjoying what's the sun peeping out now on a beautiful spring morning in Melbourne. As we see the Sydney crew just dipping under the Swan Street Bridge. Have a look back down at the bend they've just traversed.
The names too in that crew from St Paul's College on behalf of the University of Sydney. And, the bow seat, Grace Marylees, Ella Ramsey, Grace Anderson, Anya Koronova, Grace Charge, the captain in the 5-seat, Libby Carey in 6, Jamie Locke in 7, Frankie Richards the stroke, and Bridget Pye the cogs. A number of this crew with previous boat racing experience in 2024 and a couple, in fact, in 2023 as well. The coach, Harry Scambler, coaching this crew for the past 3 years. So they've been at this level a few times, but yet to taste a win in recent years, St Paul's College, and they've got their job, their work cut out for them there as they come into the concluding quarter or so now of this 2,000-metre race.
A little hard to get a line with on the long shot there.
So you can see conditions are a little challenging out there on the Yarra. It is a wonderful spring day, but a little bit windy, which is unusual, of course, for Melbourne. We should be stressed to our interstate viewers and visitors.
Just cut back to the start of the men's group. We could see at the last split there, the second split, it was a 5-second advantage to the Melbourne College crew from Trinity.
There we have both crews on screen. Passing there, the judges' box. That's the old Victorian Rowing Association judges' box on the left of screen, which is the finish for the Australian Henley Regatta, held on this course in February of each year. But in this case, the finish line is around that bend. So a slight advantage here, potentially, to the crew from St Paul's over the closing stroke. But they've got, it was 5 seconds. That looks like to be about 3 or so boat lengths now. So I'd bet you that's probably a 9 or 10 second lead now to the crew from Trinity over St Paul's College in the closing stretch now as they move right in towards the CBD of Melbourne. Some wonderful sights behind them as they make this last bend.
There's always something going on in Melbourne. We had the marathon last week. Streets closed everywhere. Runners, traffic. All the walkways down on the right lead directly to the National Tennis Centre and the famous MCG. You see a lot of work going on there. The Green Line project that the City of Melbourne is undertaking to make some of the water and the waterways, the Yarra particularly, more accessible to public wanting to wander along there. Some walkways similar to some of the work they've done in New York.
Inspired, yes, by the High Line, which is up above New York City. But here comes the crew from Trinity College, and they have come across the finish line here and recorded a win in the women's college crew race, and it is about a 3-length margin there, so we'll wait on official confirmation of the verdict, but no doubt about our winners there, Brendan, an all-the-way win to Trinity College from the University of Melbourne.
Yeah, a fantastic start to the day for Melbourne. This event, apart from the college races, has been lean pickings for the University of Melbourne in the last decade, if I'm truthful.
So they get their day off to a winning start on home waters. Of course, it remains to be seen that the home water advantage will benefit the other Melbourne crews as well. A very different course here today than last year's race across the waters of Sydney Harbour, and finishing up, in fact, in Darling Harbour was the finish line of last year's Australian boat race. But Trinity get the win, and they'll return into the pontoons here on Boathouse Drive.
And hopefully we'll get a chance possibly to speak with their captain, Ellie Campbell, at some stage after they've done their recovery and got themselves out of the water. The Reg Mombassa statue, always a favourite for videographers and photographers in the background.
Distinctive, certainly.
So after a 2-kilometre event like that, how are these rowers? Are completely maxed out?
Well, that's the aim, to get to the finish and not be able to row another stroke, if you can plan it that way. It's obviously a bit trickier on a winding river course like this, not a standard 2,000-metre straight line where you've got markers and buoys and such things to know where the finish line's coming. But yeah, they will be quite exhausted after that, although always less exhausted when you finish in first place.
And you mentioned previously it's such a unique event, modelled in some way, even though it started in 1860 on the English event, the famous boat race between Oxford and Cambridge. How different is this to the traditional rowing that people would see on TV, whether it's a World Championship or an Olympic Games, where we have the 6 or 8 lanes and I have a much better visual idea of what's going on around me?
Yes, very different in the sense it's a one-on-one race more than anything else. Distance is the same as far as these crews are concerned, but generally speaking, rowing is a straight line sport at most international regattas. So this is much more of a cox's race as well. The challenge of steering around the bends, getting your crew in the best water, some bridges to navigate there. You can see on screen that Chapel Street bridge where both crews have to squeeze through the same central arch. So it has probably some additional challenges than your standard 2,000-metre international races for sure, and with just one of the crew to keep track of course, it's very much a one-on-one match race scenario, and the 2 crews desperate to get in front early to try and be able to control the race from there.
And we can see the college men's crews on camera at the moment. They'd just be going through their final preparations.
Yeah, just waiting for start time, which by my watch is still a couple of minutes away. They will be waiting. There's following umpire for each of these races, so they're in position. Now, lifesavers there on the right of screen too, as we see at all regattas throughout Victoria. Surf Lifesaving Victoria do a wonderful job of ensuring the safety of all athletes on the water. Starting here in the shadows of the CityLink freeway there as well on the right of screen. And, triangular structure in the background is it Amy Park or the Melbourne Rectangular Stadium, as the ABC
I
would
always
call
prefer the Melbourne Rectangular
Exactly.
Stadium, but
Me too.
Amy Park, yeah.
Yes.
One of the beautiful features of Melbourne as a city is the positioning of the sports stadiums and venues right in the middle of the city. Pretty much walk anywhere
It is
you need to get to.
I did actually have the pleasure of walking down here from home this morning, down through Collingwood, across past the MCG, through the tennis centre, and across the Swan Street Bridge. It's a wonderful part of the city.
We can see the Marshalls boat making their way back down to supervise affairs.
The role of the umpire is particularly important in these races. We mentioned during the women's race, it is somewhat subjective in terms of overtaking space and how the crews can push themselves across the river. So our umpires do play a critical role. And the race is off, so the umpire's boat heading up is stopped so as not to create any more wash. And the following umpire is there, but we are racing now in the men's college race right on time at 9:30 as well.
And we've got on the north side of the crew, it's the north side of the river, it's the Sydney crew from St John's College with Sebastian Zuckerman, Malcolm Deegan, the captain, and the 2-seat Jude Smith, Caden Miller-Wright, Angus McCaffrey, Alex Negline, Alistair Brown, the strokers Charlie Baker, and the Cox James Whiting. And on the right side of the river, or the closest, the foreshot closest to the camera in the darker uniforms, it's the Melbourne crew for Trinity College. The stroke, Digby Banks, 7-seat Oliver Williams, Archie Allen, Ryan Fowler, Zach Cooper, Jack Anderson, Casper Tabane, and the bow seat, Alex Levney is also the captain, the Fox being Charlie Wallace.
Fair bit of previous boat race experience here for the Trinity College crew, at least. Looks like all the St John's boys rowing in their first Australian boat race, but Trinity have been here before for Melbourne, who, as you said, Brendan, have had not a particularly good record in the senior university race, but the college events, they've had a few wins in recent years at least.
They have, as they slipped under the Morell Bridge there. The bridge is was, as mentioned, opened to cars for its first 100 years of existence, but about 25 years ago was devoted or handed back to pedestrians and bikes only. One of the really nice features and ways to get across the Yarra River. These two crews much closer together, Richard. They've chosen lines. We did see a coming together last year, infamous coming together in one of the senior races.
We did.
Their oars don't appear to be that far apart, even though we're looking from a side-on view there.
Yeah, no, they're certainly about as close together as the umpires would want them to be. And the crew on the right, which is the Sydney crew there on the north side, St John's College, does have the advantage of this bend. They'll try and just extend their lead a little. It's probably only a canvas, maybe a quarter of a length now, but the crew from Trinity College of Melbourne will have to try and stick close to them around the bend here. The tide is coming in at the moment as well, so these crews are running downstream. They are against the tide at this stage on the Yarra, so you would think that the stream's stronger there in the middle of the river, which is where Trinity sits. So a hard minute or two coming up for the crew from Melbourne as they try and keep touch with the combination from St John's College.
Yeah, the timing splits would tell us there was less than a second between the two crews at the first split through 500 metres. This race, of course, 2 kilometres. The main two races to come today over the extended 3.2 kilometre course.
Although the course, as you mentioned, slightly shortened from after 2 years ago to try and avoid the possibility of incidents happening around Herring Island at the start, as was the case in 2023. But I promised the umpires I wouldn't mention that this morning, so I won't do it again. The crew's clad in very similar shades of green. Now, Brendan, it's been as long established. I'm no colour expert, but it was slightly darker green there, I think, on the Trinity combination, who are now on the right of screen, but you can see the lead there is narrowly with St Paul's. St John's, I should say. St Paul's, of course, race in the girls' race. St John's on the left, just getting some steering assistance there from the umpires too, trying to keep these crews wide apart. Now there's plenty of space between them at this stage, as I reckon they try and avoid that middle stream of the river. And now, of course, the advantage will come in the late stages of the race for the crew from Trinity College. As they head past that through this Swan Street Bridge, the judges' box, you can see there behind them, the river will curve around to the left for the final third or so of this race. So it is on in earnest here in this men's college race.
So people watching at home mightn't be clear, who's doing the actual steering? Is it the coxswain control?
The coxswain is, yes. So we'll have a rudder that's behind him, connected to
him or her.
Him or her, yes, indeed. In fact, coxswains can be of either gender in any rowing event now, so it's not at all specific to the event they're racing in. But yes, a string in their hands used to turn the rudder, which will be just behind the cox at the rear or the stern of the boat there. They are responsible. They will so sometimes, not so much on this course, but in big head races like at the head of the Yarra coming up in a few weeks, they'll race around the big bend upstream in the Yarra. They will often use the rowers too to actually add some pressure on one side or reduce pressure on the other to ensure steering. But the one thing most coxswains are taught at an early stage is to minimise steering, because as soon as you turn your rudder, you will slow the boat down.
So we're getting very close to the finish line now. Maybe St John's on the right and the white strip just holding a marginal advantage. It's flattening out towards the finish line.
Still got a little bit of a bend to go here, and that bend will favour Trinity, who are really right up alongside. We had Trinity rating on about 35 strokes per minute about 30 seconds ago, and the crew next to them slightly lower in pace. It looks like still St John's on about 33, so Trinity really throwing everything at the crew from Sydney here. You can see those green blades just moving a bit quicker than the sky blue blades of the crew from New South Wales, and they're just about on terms here, Brendan, with only a few strokes to go.
Almost slipped down into our view. We've got a fantastic shot, the boat following there, focusing on the crew from Melbourne, from Trinity. And they'll be aware of the proximity of the other crew.
They'll know this course well, I've no doubt. They're up on almost 40 strokes per minute now too, the crew from Trinity. There's St John's in view. They're about to appear at our commentary box window here as well. But the lead you can see is with the crew from Trinity College of Melbourne, who will make it 2 from 2 in the college races, and they're clear by just over a length as they come across the finish. And the crowds here on the VRA landing out in front of the boat sheds on Boathouse Drive. It is Trinity College, and look at the jubilation there. 2 from 2 in the college races ahead of St John's College from Sydney.
Yeah, coxswain Charlie Wallace with his hands in the air there. You mentioned the rating there, Richard, coming down towards the finish, 40. That 40 strokes per minute?
Yes, so the rating, as we call it, or cadence, as would be in other sports, but basically a measure of strokes per minute. 40 is getting up. It's not a pace you can usually sustain for too long, although in recent World Championships we have seen a few European crews especially have a crack up towards 50, but there becomes a point at which you lose a bit of length and technique in trying to hold that rein together. So that was a good lift, but you could just see Trinity overrating, getting more out of each stroke over the Sydney crew, and that's why they came through late to get the win.
Yeah, certainly a compelling contest until really the last, maybe the last 200 metres of the race. They turned that last bend.
And a smart race too from Trinity. They obviously knew the last bend was to their advantage, so they didn't have to be in front all the way through the race, as I suggested they might want to be before it began, but they were able to stick with St John's and use the advantage there in the closing strokes to get themselves in front. And in the end, it was over a length, so about probably a 4 or so second win, I reckon it will be, which is a substantial margin. Not as substantial as Trinity's girls claimed in the previous race, but they'll be pretty happy, I reckon, at Trinity College right now.
We just saw a couple of shots there of the Princess Street Bridge that runs right up to Flinders Street Station, having some work done on it at the moment, and hand across past the various boathouses. People may not be aware that there's a multitude of boat sheds right in the middle of the city for various schools and university clubs.
It is, and we were talking just before the coverage began earlier about how unique this is, certainly in terms of Australia, to have basically all of your clubs and many schools all training in the same area, it does lead to chaos out there on the waters. The Yarra is not the widest river I've ever seen, but it is a wonderful area to see so many boats, so many clubs, so many schools all working together, sharing the space, and they've certainly obviously produced a number of Australia's finest rowers here over a number of decades now. So Boathouse Drive is certainly a wonderful part of the city.
As we can see, one of the men's crews heading down. The men's boat race will be one of the main two events on the agenda today. Will be next up. They just slid under the Cremorne Railway Bridge with its distinctive graffiti and heading down towards the Church Street Bridge, which Chapel Street crosses down in one of the fashionable areas of Melbourne. As we look back across the Yarra, yeah, fantastic start to the day. The two college regattas, as you mentioned over the last few years, the college regattas tend to be shared between the two universities a little more evenly. But looking ahead to the main two events, the men's and women's event, the men's event, it's the 15th incarnation since it was restarted in 2009. And amazingly, it almost sounds unbelievable to say, but Sydney is looking for their 10th consecutive victory.
Yes, it's an impressive streak in a two-boat race, isn't it? To have such a strong series of performances, which mean they've won not just on Sydney Harbour, but here, of course, on the Yarra as well. So Sydney proving they can win in all conditions. But if you look through the crew list, there's a experience come into the University of Melbourne crew too. So it's hard to. Betting markets, of course, on these races, of course, quite inappropriately, but it would be, if there was a favourite, you'd probably think it's Sydney just, but I think we can expect a fairly tight race in the men's and the women's boat races coming up as well. But yes, will that streak be broken? It will be answered in half an hour's time when that race is concluded.
Yeah, you mentioned significant inclusions in the Melbourne crew. Josh Booth, stroke triple Olympian, has finished his Doctor of Medicine studies. Both of the crews are allowed to have one alumnus or a recent graduate in the crew, and Josh Booth has pleasingly made himself available. What would be the motivation for Josh, do you think, having stepped back from international rowing?
Yes, well, it'll be his 7th Australian boat race, Josh Booth, most recently back in 2018, but I'm guessing he's probably been a part of that 10-year losing streak, so there might be some desire to right some wrongs from the past, possibly there for Josh Booth. He'll step into the stroke seat of the crew too, so he will really be in control of the rhythm and the pace as they come down the course. So it'll be fascinating to see just what that does for Josh Booth, of course, Olympic silver medalist from the Rio Games and 4 back in 2016. As you said, he's a triple Olympian, so he's really done everything in our sport, but he hasn't yet won the Australian boat race.
Yeah. As you mentioned, it would have been part of the start of that successful run for Sydney. He's probably had to sit there many times and watch the presentations be made. Just running quickly through those crews for the upcoming men's race. We've got a few minutes before that gets underway. For Melbourne, as we mentioned, Josh Booth, the stroke, James Houghton, the 7, Fraser Misgamble in the 6th seat, Charlie White, the 5, Ethan Brown, James Simpson, Charlie McClure, and in the bow seat it's James Forsyth, coached by Matt Ryan, who himself has been involved in multiple Olympic campaigns and domiciled down here in Melbourne at the moment.
And originally from Sydney, of course, one of the most successful King's Cup rowers in the history of New South Wales. So familiar with the Sky Blue, but he's had great success in Victoria in recent years and has now coached a couple of Victorian King's Cup crews who've beaten New South Wales.
I wonder how that sits with him.
Well, I think he's quite happy with his performances, but I do know of a few people in his old home state who maybe would love him back anyway.
And for the Sydney men's crew, they're coxed by Jack McDonald. They have Will Rogers in the stroke seat, Jason Kench, the captain, Gus Sazolka, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jack Cullen, Hamish Danks, William Gregory, Angus Mitchell, Finn Mitchell in the bow seat, and they're coached by Simon Huxley with the assistance of Phil Bourguignon.
Yes, Phil Bourguignon, and
Bourguignon.
who's actually, I guess, he's a Queenslander originally too. I'm sure he coached many years ago at a school in Brisbane called Somerville House, who row in a very distinctive bright shade of fluoro green. Those familiar with the Carrum Rowing Club down here probably recognise the colour. But Phil also spent some time over in the UK for many years and has returned. He was a head coach at the University of Queensland Boat Club for a couple of years, and now he's moved on to Sydney University. So Phil Bourguignon, certainly a very experienced coach as well, in conjunction with Simon Huxley, who's the men's coach at Sydney University Boat Club as well.
As we look through it's apparent most of these rowers would have competed either internationally or at the bare minimum at national championships. And we think back to national championships held much earlier in the year. In terms of the rowing calendar, most of the rhythm of the events would start at the very back end of the year. The championships would run, the various state and national championships run through the March-April period. The next part of the year is generally given to international competitions around the world. What is the situation for rowers? Are they 12 months a year now? Is that?
It's look like at the elite end of the sport, largely yes. Obviously, yes, more so. You're exactly right, especially here in Victoria, where the seasons play a substantial role in a good time to go rowing. The season is just sort of winding up now into its more serious phase. There was a school regatta held yesterday on the Bowen River in Geelong, and also a club regatta at Lake Waroona in Bendigo, a sprint regatta there. So we're gradually moving through into some regattas, some head races coming up, the head of the Yarra and Melbourne head as well. And then the really serious championship regattas do take place, as you said, in our state championships in Victoria, usually in very early March. Heads of the river and such for the school crews, and the national championships in late March, which are back at Lake Barrington again in Tasmania next year. A wonderful, although difficult to get to venue in the northwest of Tasmania. And then, yes, the international season goes through the European summer, effectively, which is our winter. And those crews, or athletes lucky enough to be selected, will go and often train from the Australian European Training Centre on Lake Varazzi and compete at international regattas. We actually saw it only about 2 weeks ago. The World Championships took place in Shanghai, later than usual this year. They're usually in late August, but this time they were at the end of September, in a very warm venue in Shanghai.
We saw the Sydney men's crew just slip by. They were certainly not going to have any trouble, and you weren't at home spotting them in the bright pink uniform.
Yes, a distinctive colours, certainly. So I'm assuming we'll see University of Melbourne in the traditional dark blue.
Dark blue, I think, yeah. I like the idea of the pink. I think that making the sport more easily recognisable to whether people are watching as they're wandering. There'll be thousands of people wandering along the Yarra at various stages of today, for whom rowing might be a curiosity. We've certainly got some of the more dedicated fans we can see set up in front of the boathouses across the finish line. But it's certainly an opportunity for the sport on such a beautiful day to showcase itself in front of a sometimes unsuspecting audience. And I like the idea of the colourful outfits.
No, it's great to have some regattas here on the Yarra. Of course, most of our major regattas here in Victoria are held either at the Gambie Lakes or at the 1956 Olympic venue at Lake Wendouree in Ballarat, which are the two main 2,000-metre courses we have. But it is great to have some usage of this wonderful river through the centre of Melbourne, especially in this stage of the year. As I mentioned, the head of the Yarra coming up in late November, which is an 8-kilometre time trial from here upstream to Hawthorn Rowing Club. The week before that, the Melbourne Head is raced on a similar course to today. In fact, the downstream event organised by one of Melbourne Uni's own, Peter Anthony, Olympic gold medalist from 1992, is one of many hardworking volunteers who make the Melbourne Head happen too. And I think it's about 3 or 4 weekends' time from now as we get towards a busy time of year, and the Yarra sees plenty of racing action.
Yeah, just to give you a little bit of historical perspective, this race was first held when the two rowing clubs from Australia's two premier universities met in 1860. If you can imagine that long ago, by 1870 they were undergoing regular competition. The University of Adelaide was incorporated into some of that. And the rivalry was on and off then through the, I guess it's a 150-year period, revived in 2009 as the Australian Boat Race. That first event, I think, or the second event in 2010 was held over a 6.9-kilometre course. Certainly an endurance event from the Leichhardt Rowing Club down to the Riverview Wharf in Sydney. It's along the Lane Cove River, I'd imagine.
I think so. And that's certainly,
of.
yes, and if certainly the vision from last year's race is anything to go by, it's often a fairly a rough patch of water too. There were ferries going past, maybe not back at that time, but still, yes, a challenging course.
And the first time it was held here in Melbourne, they raced the other way from down near the Docklands Casino precinct, a 4-kilometre course, coming back towards this way, finishing at the boathouse. As mentioned, we're getting a little bit of an update of some of these events now.
Well, here at the University of Sydney, it's almost been a scene out of a sporting time machine, and that's appropriate because this is the Australian boat race. It goes back 154 years, and in its current manifestation, it's into its 5th year. It's between the Universities of Sydney and Melbourne. It's the 8s on Sydney Harbour this time. They alternate between the Yarra River in Melbourne and, of course, Sydney Harbour, and it's a massive state rivalry. And I'm talking to Sasha Bolonogov, the 5-seat and the captain of the University of Sydney crew, and you've dominated this one over the last few years, haven't you? But you've had a lot of changes.
Yeah, so this is my 4th Australian boat race now, Tim, and there have been a lot of changes over the years. So part of the requirements for this event is that 6 students must be currently enrolled, and 2 can be past students. So there's a lot of chopping and changing over the years, but it sort of makes it more exciting, just rejuvenating the crew every year.
Dave Crawshay, Olympic gold medalist in 2008 in the men's double scull. How different and how enjoyable is this sort of racing out on the open water?
It's very difficult and it's extremely enjoyable. We're so used to racing over 2Ks in a straight course and getting into a river situation, or in this case a harbour. You're at the mercy of all the boats around you. It's actually quite exciting. I
could ask you what keeps you doing this, but you've got large ambitions still, haven't you? You're heading for Rio, hopefully? Hopefully, fingers crossed, yes. I went away in 2013 and had a year off and just kind of wondered whether my motivation was still there. And I came back last year and rowed in the men's 8 and I found that it was there. And I really enjoyed rowing the 8, I really did. But I kind of thought, well, I've got to go where my strengths are, being 2 years out from the Olympics, and my strengths are in the sculling boat. Hedda Cooper, stroke of the University of Melbourne crew, you were unbeaten in this race over 4 years. How do you protect that record?
I think we just approach each year as a new year, and rowing here is pretty awesome. We're just excited for the opportunity come Sunday.
One thing has to be said, it must be incredibly different rowing on the Yarra to rowing on Sydney Harbour.
Yeah, look, it's pretty different. The Yarra's nice and narrow, and you've got some sharp bends and always pretty much flat. And I hear on Sydney it's pretty much always wavy and it's quite open, so difficult for the cocks. But I think we're really confident in our little cock, Sarah Banting. So, yeah, Sunday should be exciting.
Well, there you have it. Sydney and Melbourne, always different. Should be a great race. 4.4 kilometres from Woolwich to Darling Harbour. They'll leave nothing out there on the water. And journalists are always impartial, but you've got to show your state colours. And sorry, Hedda, but go the Uni of Sydney. Back to you.
A little bit of a look back there to 2014. Fox Sports doing some coverage then, giving some colour to the event. As we look down towards the Yarra, the crews are going to be a good way further down this beautiful river, about 3.2 kilometres to be exact.
Yep,
Richard?
That's the magic number this year. It was a few hundred metres longer last time we raced on the Yarra in 2023. Was shortened slightly to exclude Herring Island and some rather tight bends in that part of the Yarra. So it'll be 3.2 kilometres starting just downstream of Herring Island. And there are now 2 crews starting to prepare.
As you mentioned, if you're wondering why the University of Sydney and the University of Melbourne, well, they are the 2 most famous universities in Australia. 123,000 students between them, 19,000 staff, and they can boast 950,000 alumni, Australia and around the world, featuring Nobel laureates, Oscar winners, business leaders, medical pioneers, artists, intellectuals, activists, certainly 2 of the great educational institutions in the world, and both sit inside the top 60 rankings, the Times recognised Times educational rankings. Melbourne sitting in 37th at the moment, Sydney 53rd. And from a pure results point of view, in the previous 14 editions of this race, it's been 10 wins to the crew from Sydney, just the 2 for Melbourne. And I know Pat Riley, the famous basketball coach, coined the phrase three-peat. When a team won 3 championships in a row, I don't know what the equivalent terminology would be.
10-peat, is it? Yeah.
If Sydney were to win today and etched their name on the trophy for a 10th consecutive time.
Yeah, it would be quite remarkable, especially as you mentioned in the race with just the two crews to have one university so dominant in the men's event.
See the names, Sydney crew there, as we mentioned before. And if you're wondering why there's 9 names, of course, the 8 rowers and the Cox, Jack McDonald, will have an entirely different view of the race. We can see him just out of shot there with his headset on. He'll be looking one way, the rowers the other. I almost think it's a vexed task being the coxswain.
Yeah, look, it's a tough job certainly, and they particularly earn their money, such as it is in a race like this, where they do have to not just steer a straight line, but make their way safely down the Yarra course. And at the same time, the Cox really is the voice of the coach in the boat. So I'll be talking the crews through their race plan, giving them locations where they are on the river, and suggesting or imploring them to do certain things at certain times to have their best chance of winning the race.
Just getting a close-up of Sydney's outfits there. There, of course, it's an orange strip, not a pink strip. And orange, one of the colours the University of Sydney adopted. Used for a number of their sporting teams.
I've actually been Googling, Brendan, while we were watching some videos there. I believe the colour is ochre.
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 I'm going to run with that. Yeah.
At least if Google can be believed.
That makes me feel a little better, somewhere between the extreme of pink and orange.
Yeah, it is an official colour of the University of Sydney now as well. Added to their uniform about 10 or 12 years ago to match the colour of the red earth of Australia.
Right, and that's the Church Street Bridge. Beautiful piece of architecture we could just see in that shot. That'll be the first of a number of bridges the two crews move under.
And you can see the width of the Yarra there, so there's not much space really either side of these crews. So really be on in earnest in the opening strokes of this race. Josh Booth there, stroke seat of the University of Melbourne crew, as you mentioned, a triple Olympian in his 7th Australian boat race.
A doctor to boot, doctor of medicine. So the starter now will just be urging them to try and a line of sight.
Generally, there'll be an aligner on the bank who will line the two bows up, and then the starter, in this case, I suspect, may in fact be the same person there on the bank, and the umpire will follow from behind. They're set, and they're off.
Trying to rapidly gather momentum. The crew from Sydney on the right in the ochre, or the orange as it may appear on screen. It's the University of Melbourne in shot.
Aggressive start there too, certainly as you'd expect by the Josh Booth stroke University of Melbourne crew as they look to gain an advantage. The bend will favour the University of Sydney here in the opening stroke behind their stroke. Will Rogers, who was at the absolute other end of his rowing career compared to Josh Booth, the 19-year-old in the stroke seat there of the crew from the University of Sydney, but they are matching it stroke for stroke as they pass under Chapel Street or the Church Road Bridge there and head towards behind them the excitement of the railway bridge at Cremorne as well.
Possibly Melbourne, just with their bow in front at the moment. Plenty of tactics to play out over a race of this length.
I've got Melbourne up on 41 strokes per minute here in the early exchanges. University of Sydney about 2 points lower, currently on 39. So of course this is a long race here, 3.2 kilometres. Will take them, I think, about 10 minutes or so into the tide here. So it is longer than your standard 8's race over 2,000 metres of about 5.5 minutes or so. They won't want to use up all their energy in the early strokes, but it is important, of course, to put themselves in the best position possible. And it's still the corner there with the University of Sydney as they make their way around to the right-hand side of screen.
Sliding under the railway bridge there. Two crews fairly close together. So we did see an actual coming together last year.
It's been a strong push there too from the University of Sydney. I think you almost waited for the apex of that corner to really mount a strong surge alongside University of Melbourne. I reckon for the first time in this Australian boat race, it's the University of Sydney in the ochre colours who've got themselves narrowly in front as the peloton there of watching cyclists makes their way down the onto the pontoons alongside the river as well. A great viewing spot there.
Are they just following the race? Do they have any functional role?
I suspect they're coaches. Now, technically, coaching is not allowed during a race, but screaming words of encouragement often makes the coaches feel better anyway.
As the crews head towards the Hoddle Bridge, see in the background, carries Punt Road across the Yarra.
Will Rogers there in the stroke seat of the crew from the University of Sydney, a King's School athlete who won the under-19 single scull and the schoolboys 8 at the National Championships last year and has already made 2 Australian teams, now stroking the combination from the University of Sydney. I mentioned at the other end of his rowing career, certainly from Josh Booth, who strokes the Melbourne Uni boat, 3-time Olympian, silver medalist from the Rio Games. But it is the University of Sydney now really have withheld that strong start from the University of Melbourne. They've gone out to what looks from here to be a clear water lead now from the University of Melbourne combination. And a nice rhythmical performance there too from the University of Sydney. Blades going in and coming out of the water in time.
So they have the right of way through that first arch of the Hoddle Bridge.
Yep.
Both crews sliding through the middle.
The river will now come back to the left of screen, so to the favour of the crew from the University of Melbourne, but they need to ensure that the University of Sydney don't get too much of a lead, because they would then be able to come across and claim their choice of water. And that's a gap of stretching out, I reckon, to probably close to 2 lengths now in favour of the University of Sydney combination.
From a directional point of view here, Richard, it looks like the Melbourne crew is aware that they're down, maybe trying to cut this corner a little bit.
Yep, they'll definitely be looking to do that as they head up towards the Burrell Bridge. I think, again, both crews are required to use the centre arch of the bridge. They can't completely cut the corner. There are rules about where you have to be on each of the bridges. But that is looking like more and more of a substantial margin there for the University of Sydney combination. Straight by Will Rogers, Cox by Jack McDonald. Jackson Kench in the 7-seat New South Wales Kings Cup rower from this and previous years as well. Solka, Jack Cullen, Hamish Danks, who also rode in the Kings Cup for New South Wales this year, and they were beaten by the Victorians on Lake Barrington. Gregory, I guess Mitchell and Finn Mitchell. Not sure if the Mitchells are brothers there in the bow pair of that Sydney crew, but a common surname regardless. Simon Huxley and Phil Bulgin, the coaches there of that crew from the University of Sydney, as the women's crews are on their way up to the start too, it looks like, as we're getting ready for the final race of the day. But this is certainly a strong performance here from the University of Sydney, who we're looking for. So this would be
10 on the bounce.
Yeah, remarkable.
So in the situation Melbourne's in now, what are the possible tactical adjustments they can make, or is it just a matter of they've been outsped on the day?
It's interesting because often in rowing, I've done a lot of coaching in the past. You spend a lot of time coaching your crews to stay in their own boat and not really be too concerned with what the opposition is doing around them. Similar, of course, in swimming, where you have athletes very much stay in their lane and not look at the swimmers either side of them and just swim their own race. But in a 2-boat race, that's tricky when you know the one crew you have to catch. At this point, because they're facing backwards, they won't really know how far ahead that University of Sydney crew is. I'm sure their Cox will be giving instructions, Sam Leveni, and telling them what they've got to make up. They'll have confidence, of course, in their finish, I'm sure. But it is challenging when you can't see, and probably in this case can't even hear the crew that you are chasing.
Does this give the Sydney crew a distinct advantage in the fact that they can clearly see their only opposition?
Yeah, no, definitely does. Definitely does. It's one of the, because you are facing backwards, there is an advantage in being the crew that can see the opposition. They can, they'll be aware when Melbourne Uni make a move, which I'm sure they'll do here over the closing parts of the race, and they can sort of wait and respond and just do enough to stay in front. So certainly at this stage, it is an advantage to the University of Sydney, and yes, the unique nature of rowing, where you're facing one way and going the other does probably add to that advantage now of the University of Sydney combination in the ochre colours out in front on the left of screen.
And the last split we have, it's a 9-second gap, just ever increasing throughout each of the time splits down the course. I'm starting to try and do the mathematics of what sort of rating you would have to reel in a 9-second differential.
Yes, and that's where it becomes challenging because increasing rating only works to an extent. It's really more about increasing boat speed, and rating is one of the ways you can do that. But at a certain point, if the strokes start to get too short and too messy, the rating's no longer effective to move the boat faster. So they'll be looking to really maintain their length of stroke and ensure they get maximum distance out of the boat with every stroke they take. This combination from the University of Melbourne, who are rowing well together there too. We can see from the side they're clearing a full length of puddles. So the puddles from the bow rowers passing through the stern pair before the next stroke is taken. So they're getting relatively good clearance here, but they are fast running out of water as they've come under now the Swan Street Bridge. It's just clear water ahead of them now. The University of Melbourne as they try and snap this streak, but Sydney University will be very, very hard to catch from here. Should also mention Fraser Miss-Campbell in the 6th seat of that University of Melbourne crew, one of our National Training Centre athletes here who trains, of course, up at the Reinhold Barchi National Training Centre in Canberra. So some experience there in the stern end of the University of Melbourne crew, but this slightly younger crew from University of Sydney has, I reckon, around about 300 metres to go around the final bend now.
Yeah, you mentioned Fraser. It's another of many rowers juggling the demands of relocating to a centre of excellence, trying to complete his studies, which he did his undergraduate studies, but I know he's got some postgraduate options on the table. And you mentioned Sydney really just sitting with that commanding advantage, have full vision of the Melbourne crew, and we can see the pain etched on the faces of the Melbourne crew as they came across the shot there. This 3.2 kilometres, no easy way to spend a Sunday morning.
No time to enjoy the views of the Yarra as they work their way down the final section of the course, and I reckon we're soon to see the ochre appear in the view here at the finish line as well, but it is a substantial margin now to that University of Sydney combination, around about 3 or so lengths that would be, so it's going to finish, you'd think, at about a 10-second margin between these couple of crews. The final corner does favour University of Melbourne, but the gap will be too much. And here comes the crew from the University of Sydney for 10 in a row in the Australian boat race. It is University of Sydney who've got the win here on the south side of the Yarra, and second place is going to go in a few strokes' time to the combination in the dark blue there of the University of Melbourne in front of their own boat as they come across in second place. But the University of Sydney juggernaut, just unstoppable.
Yeah, and sometimes we can tend to forget that at events such as this, a short preparation, single event, rowers have been all over the place trying to come together, that it really is a feather in the cap of coaches Simon Huxley and Phil Bourguignon. To be able to consistently get these disparate parts together for a single event and achieve such a level of excellence that we see them win 10 in a row.
Exactly, as you mentioned early in the season too, so not easy to get. Rowing is such a sport about combination, and you get that by rowing together, and it's difficult sometimes through the winter months. And well done to Josh Booth there in the stroke. So he's getting married soon too, I understand. So happy wedding to Josh and his fiancée Bridget, coming up shortly as well, and great to see him back in the boat for his 7th Australian boat race.
Yeah, but well, we in Melbourne might have hoped for a different result, but Sydney demonstrating their excellence once again to take their 13th win overall out of 15 and 10 in a row now in the men's race. A comprehensive win set up by an early surge just before the first bridge. It was almost the two crews looked in tandem, and then away Sydney went, and that margin they were able to just eke out and add increments to along the course.
Yeah, you could see Melbourne Uni were really aggressive out of the start as if they wanted to try and do it there, get their boat in front, but Sydney used the advantage of that inside bend on their northern side, and at one stage we just saw a really powerful push. They seemed to go for about half a length down to half a length up in the space of probably 10 or 20 strokes, which was remarkable. And from there, really it was one-way traffic all the way down the course. So the University of Sydney will win the Edmund Barton Trophy, which is a wonderfully impressive piece of silverware on display down here too. Named, of course, after one of the founding fathers of Australia and our first Prime Minister, Edmund Barton, who was a student and, in fact, a rower at the University of Sydney. Well, in the 1800s, before his political career really took off. Also a member of the New South Wales Parliament for a few years too, I think, before becoming the first Prime Minister of Australia, and later on a High Court judge as well. So a wonderfully storied history there, and a great trophy that's almost become a permanent possession after 10 years of the University of Sydney too, I suspect.
I don't know if they have smaller replica versions for the competitors, but an overall time there of 9 minutes 55 seconds, which translates to a minute and 33 seconds per 500 metres, which is moving along for open water rowing.
Makes my about 10-minute guess seem remarkably informed of that one. I can tell you was not, but yes, because yes, a normal 2,000 metre race is around about 1.5 minutes in benign conditions, and this is almost twice as long. So it is certainly a tough ask. They are racing into the tide, as we've said. A little bit of wind out there, but not as bad as I thought it could have been. I must admit, when I got up this morning, there was quite a bit of wind around, but the river itself is quite protected on both sides here. One of the benefits of a narrow, winding river is that, unlike the Brisbane River where I learnt to row, where you could get whitecaps happening at all hours a day, and especially in the afternoons, this is a very different place entirely.
As we look at the clock on the Flinders Street Railway Station, it can tell us that we're about 17 minutes away from the start of the women's race. We did see the two crews just working their way back down the course. Really all responsibility falls to the Melbourne women's crew now. The women's race has taken a similar strange pattern, with Melbourne winning the first 8 editions of the women's race. From 2009 onwards, and then Sydney taking the last 6. So, hard to explain those patterns in some ways, but certainly Melbourne, having seen what the fate that became the men there, really have it all to do to...
Although, interestingly, the women, of course, would have seen the finish of the race, so they would have seen the boats go past, but they won't know. They may have an idea from when they saw the boats pass how things were playing out, but they won't know for sure how the results played out down here at the finish. And again, they'll be, I suspect, as focused as they can to try and get their own victory. But that's a remarkable record. So 8 wins, University of Melbourne.
And then the last 6 to Sydney. Yeah, remarkable. It's quite... and in fact, the last 6 events, Sydney's won the men and women's races. Yes. We mentioned the college races have been far more a mixed bag. But
but there were a couple of gaps. I think... obviously, the COVID years, I think there were no races held in 2020 or 21.
21, yeah.
So that 6-year drought actually spans 8 years, essentially. So it goes all the way back, I think, to 2017, possibly, when the University of Melbourne last won either the men's or the women's race. But it is a strong crew that both universities have put out. In fact, as I was going through the crews yesterday and looking at some of the names that came up, big names indeed.
Dutch are doing some wonderful things. I'm going to Holland. You've got similar coaches as you have. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. The steps of athletes, the same sort of, a couple of people. And welcome back. Just one of the 4 regattas. Can I call them regattas, Richard, or standalone?
Well, this would be, I think we call it a race. The regatta is the
collection of...
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Or if you're American, it'd be a regatta.
Regatta.
But yes, in Australia we have regattas and we have buoys, not regattas and buoys.
Just the women's race to come. I say just. It's an event that Melbourne can at least lay claim to having won more times than the University of Sydney. But as you mentioned, has been a barren patch recently.
Yeah, and they're racing for the Bella Guerin Trophy.
And it in it as well as a remarkable
It
piece
is.
of silverware.
It is, and Bella Guerin was the first woman to graduate from the University of Melbourne. And they renowned, I think suffragette's an appropriate term, in the early part of last century. So 2 magnificent trophies here for the Australian boat race, the Bella Guerin Trophy for the women and the Edmund Barton Trophy for the men, which does just show you the stature of these 2 institutions and, of course, of this race. And their attached rowing clubs, which, of course, are 2 of the oldest rowing clubs in Australia. Melbourne University Boat Club formed in 1869 and Sydney University Boat Club in 1860. So that was 1 year before the first Melbourne Cup was run, for context.
Really? That is remarkable. And the 2 crews today featuring a number of rowers that anybody who's been watching some of the recent World Championships will recognise. Melbourne's crew's coxed by Hayley Verbunt, of course, who was the cox of the Australian 8 at the Paris Olympics. Had the Senior World Championships as well this year. Stroked by Zara Lavery, who was at the Under-23 World Championships this year. Sarah DeRay herself was a recent alumna of the University of Melbourne. Eliza Gaffney was also at the 2025 Senior World Championships for the Australian senior team. Sarah Howe, Meg Cartwright, Leela Hucker, Francesca Spano, and Romy Cantwell in the bow was in single scull at the Under-23 World Championships this year, and then was a late call-up for the Senior World Championships. You had to make a dash across the globe.
Incredible story, in fact. Romy Cantwell, who was a schoolgirl at St Catherine's School here in Melbourne only a few years ago, and suddenly was rowing for Australia in the Under-23 World Championships, claimed a bronze medal, and found herself in the senior team in a trip to Shanghai. She finished 11th too in the women's single scull overall, which is an incredible result for a young athlete. I mean, the single sculling fields at World Championships are stacked with talent, and she rowed the B final, finished in 5th place, and it's just again another athlete at the very beginning of what we hope will be a fantastic international rowing career.
Yeah, and all the time she was navigating her first-year studies in the Doctor of Medicine, which is arguably the most demanding hands-on course in the country, certainly the most in-demand course in the country. Yeah, she had to do some extreme juggling in that dash to Shanghai, but managed to get it done. And I think that's a measure of generally the discipline and sense of order and time management that comes with rowing. The early starts, the immense amount of hours, whether you're on an ergo or on the water.
Yeah, and it goes right back to school rowing too. We recall when I was coaching at schools, it would often be the rowers who were the most organised and successful academically as well, because they were forced to juggle their studies and their training and be organised and be scheduled and make the most of getting up at 5 in the morning and having a really productive day. So although there was always pressure on athletes to reduce their commitment to sport, we certainly found that those involved in rowing would get excellent academic results. And you can see here too, we've got a list of the courses these athletes are all enrolled in, and there's some very complex degrees that
a lot of science and biomedicine there.
Yes, and even Eliza Gaffney, the captain, studying a Juris Doctor. I know, having a Bachelor of Laws, I can only imagine what a Juris Doctor is like, but good luck to Eliza Gaffney indeed. But all of these athletes, of course, clearly involved or have been in recent years with the University of program and having time to compete in this great sport at the same time.
As we see the University of Sydney's crew, very timely on camera there in their ochre outfits. Cox Chloe Giretta with the ochre ribbon with her back to us, stroke Tiffany Botha, Jamie Ford, Alice McReady, Emily Shepherd, the captain, Stephanie Preller, Sophia Whiteman, Eleanor Price, and the bow, Olivia Natty. And they're coached by Tom Lowrich.
Tom Lowrich himself, a two-time Olympian as well. The coach of the Sydney Uni crew, who's been in charge for many years at the Sydney Uni Boat Club now. First started coaching this crew in 2016, looks like, and has had a strong record, obviously, since then. And assisted by Alan Bennett, the senior coach at Sydney University. And hello, if she's listening, as I'm sure she is, to Alan Bennett's wife, Lizzie Chapman, one of my commentary colleagues from the National Championships, who called this race last year on Sydney Harbour. So I'm sure Lizzie enjoying the coverage here this morning as well.
And I remiss of me not to mention the new coach of the Melbourne University Boat Club, the women's program here, Beth Ross herself, a former Olympian for New Zealand. We won't hold that against her.
No, we won't.
Tokyo 2020.
And I hate to be picky, Brendan. I must point out that there is no such thing as a former Olympian. You are always an Olympian, as Ray and many others taught me. So, yes, Beth Ross, a New Zealand Olympian from that remarkable Tokyo Games where they really swept the medals, the New Zealand crews. They won the men's 8 in Tokyo and finished second in the women's 8, which for a relatively small country, but they take their rowing so seriously, and it's great to see. Our own Noel Donaldson, of course, who coaches at that other club down Boathouse Drive, had a lot to do with the strength in the New Zealand program too, of course, in recent years. So they continue to perform at a really high level, the New Zealand crews, but it's great that we've poached one over here in the form of Beth Ross, now in charge of this crew from the University of Melbourne.
Yeah, she's the director of rowing. the University Boat Club. They're certainly pleased to have her come on board this year. The crew's just doing final bits of adjustment. They'd be in the hands of the marshal at the moment, starter.
Yep, there'll be a certain point at which, depending on the system, it's either a 5-minute or 2-minute warning to be given, in which case all crews have to be ready and in the starter's hands. We're actually backing up a little, so despite saying the tide is coming in on the Yarra, it looks to me these crews have slightly overshot the start line and just backing up to the line. It will this time be the University of Melbourne on the north bank, the University of Sydney on the south side. So we know from the previous race there's an early advantage to the crew on the north. And therefore, if the University of Melbourne women's crew can get a similar start to their men's crew, they might be able to build up a bit of a lead in the early section of this race and hold that around that first long bend.
It was about that bridge that you can see in the foreground there, the Church Street Bridge, where the Sydney men's crew just put the jets on and established a break that finished up to be race winning.
Yeah, very strong and presumably preordained push at that point of the race from University of Sydney men. We'll see what the tactics are here in the women's race. I'm not going to get into predicting times now, but it'll be slightly slower, of course, in the women's race than the men's. So somewhere in the, I guess, probably likely around the 11-minute range for this particular event as University of Sydney.
Which anybody who's turned an oar over in anger for any period of time will know that 10 or 11 minutes of exertion at this level.
Yes, it's quite different to 6 or 7. Although, fun fact, of course, for those who haven't yet heard, that the rowing at the Los Angeles Olympic Games, we raced over 1,500 metres, not 2,000, for one games only. So there you go. But we're off, Brendan.
Yep. Sydney in the foreground, the ochre uniforms. University of Melbourne on the far side or the south side of the Yarra River.
Wonderful conditions too. It's just placid water out there on the Yarra too, it looks like.
Get a lovely close-up there of the crew from Sydney.
For that symmetry down the boat here too. The blades largely moving together. To quickly accelerate. A lot of weight, of course, with 9 athletes and the boat itself to get up to race pace.
It's a great shot, 4 heads going one way, 4 heads the other way in synchronisation.
Yep, the aim is to reach out over your rigger with your blade, so you need the 4 girls on one side to do the opposite of the 4 on the other side for it to work. Otherwise, it can be quite unstable. And again, an unstable boat will slow down.
Slip under the Church Street Bridge. Houses Chapel Street.
Melbourne look to have dropped their rating down from a 40-ish at the beginning to about 37 strokes per minute now. Matching it still very much stroke for stroke with the combination from the University of Sydney, who are pretty much on the same rating here. So they have matching rhythm, matching pace. Relatively straight section of river here as they head towards the Cremorne Railway Bridge for that next bend around to the right to the favour of the University of Melbourne. And now, for the first time today, Brendan, some clashing of blades there as well. It's close.
They actually come together, or maybe...
I think they were just managed to find the gaps. It always looks worse from behind because of the parallel. The angle's not quite the same, but yeah, they were very close. But no, if they'd hit, I think we would have seen a little bit more than we did there.
So at that point, the stroke will be frantically pulling on the rudder, trying to realign the course, but without losing any.
But without the key, of course, both crews will think the other crew's at fault. So there's always it's an interesting blame game to be played out. Now, watch carefully here. This was the point at which University of Sydney in the men's race really went for it and established what turned out to be a race-winning lead on that north bank. Can the University of Melbourne do the same here?
Really being tightened up against that north bank of the Yarra there. We're losing a little bit of shot. Saw the official there with the flag up in the boat.
Yeah, it looked like he was trying to steer the University of Melbourne crew across right onto that bank. I think that's the best place to be here, against the tide on the inner side of the corner. But I think the University of Sydney have rode that corner pretty well, and there's still very little between these two crews. The coaching peloton following them down there as well. Hayley Verbunt in the cox seat of the crew from University of Melbourne. Very experienced coxswain, of course, as Brendan said. Know this river particularly well. She's coxed the Australian 8 for the past couple of years. Also coached the St Catherine's Girls School crew to a credit the schoolgirls win back in March this year on the Barwon River in Geelong. So a multi-talented rowing person indeed is Hayley Verbunt. But University of Sydney have answered the challenge here. They're coxed by Chloe Giuretta there with the white long sleeves on. She was the cox of the New South Wales Youth 8 at the National Championships this year. So race that was won by New South Wales, who took out both of the female 8s at the National Interstate Regatta this year, while Victoria took out the two men's events, the Youth 8 and the King's Cup. This is a great race, side by side. But with the river bending left, you'd start to think now it might favour the University of Sydney.
Yeah, just 1/10 of a second, as would matches what we're seeing on camera at the first split. And just 3/10 of a second advantage for the University of Melbourne at that second split. Yeah, about 4 minutes change into the event. They'll slide under the Hoddle Street Bridge. Different arches there. Possibly Sydney have got their bow back in front.
Yep, I think they have. Narrowly so, but they will have the advantage of this next bend as they head towards the Morell Bridge there. Pedestrian-only bridge. The river bends around to the left to the benefit of the crew from the University of Sydney, who've got about, now it looks like, probably close to a half-length lead over the University of Melbourne. Chloe Giuretta, the cox of the Sydney Uni crew. Tiffany Botha in the stroke seat. Jamie Ford in 7, one of the NTC athletes here from NTC up at Penrith, of course, for the women, as is Eleanor Price in the 2 seat, another NTC athlete in this boat, along with Alice McCready, Emily Shepherd, Stephanie Preller, Sophia Whiteman, a Queenslander from St Margaret's School originally, who now rows for Sydney Uni, and Olivia Natty in the bow seat as well. And that lead is starting to extend here, Brendan, for the crew from universities looking for their 7th win in a row in this event.
Yeah, Melbourne taking a good tight line. You can see the flag come into the shot there. Marshall's a little concerned with the proximity of the crews.
Yeah, he's warning Sydney now to keep out of Melbourne's way.
So both crews would have each other in their peripheral vision here. Really, it's inside a boat length. It's a fantastic thing from a spectacle point of view.
Absolutely, and really only 2 bends to go now. This next one will favour University of Melbourne, and then after Swan Street, it'll curve back to the left. So it's really all or nothing now for the crew in dark blue. I think they need to make a move around this corner to try and get themselves back up on terms with University of Sydney. And of course, the difference here, unlike the men's race, Brendan, is that both crews know exactly where the other one is. They will hear them, they will see them, they will feel them if the blade gets too close, and they really know that I reckon that the race could be won or lost in the next 30 seconds or so.
The last split we had, 9/10 of a second. The Sydney crew. From a tactical point of view, they're both coxswains looking around there. They'd be trying to remain relatively calm. Maybe they've got a little burst in the locker somewhere.
Yeah. No, well, moving heads is never a good thing to try and maintain boat stability, but at least if the cox is looking rather than the athletes, it's a better situation. So, yeah, they'll be intensely aware of where each crew is, but the rowers themselves need to keep themselves focused straight ahead. And they'll want to try and cut this corner a bit more, I reckon, University of Melbourne, because at this stage, University of Sydney have maintained that margin. Blades again getting close together, and University have been warned again here by our following officials. Yeah, Flotilla in behind them, in fact.
Melbourne on the right and the Navy. Slightly adrift of Sydney on the left. As you mentioned, those blades all but interlocking there.
Yeah, there was definitely a clash there, and that has, I reckon, cost a bit of time for University of Sydney.
Flag out. Is there any penalties that can be imposed, or it's more just we're trying to navigate both crews down the course.
Look, only in the event of a serious clash or collision, they may have to stop and restart the race. But look, in the event of a really serious crash, there could, I guess, be a disqualification. But that's very, very unlikely, luckily, and unusual in this sort of racing. Those who are fans of the Oxford and Cambridge boat race too, we've had a few good comings together in recent years and a couple of race restarts as well on much wider section of the Thames, of course, around Putney in the early stages of the Oxford and Cambridge boat race. But these crews have avoided each other now, which they'd be wise to do, especially for the University of Sydney, because they just, from there, if they can hold their spot on the inside of the last corner around the judges' box, they'll be close. But University of Melbourne, this bridge is angled to the Swan Street Bridge, so don't take that as a defining marker on the course. It does angle across the river to the advantage of the Sydney crew. But this is close, Brendan. What a great finish coming up here.
This is the beautiful side of match racing. You mentioned the Swan Street Bridge. No further bridges to slide under. They're down a bend to the left and they're on to the finish line. We get an idea of the speed they're travelling. Looking at those cyclists in the background and some of the cars.
Yeah, around 20 kilometres an hour would be pretty much top speed for an 8. And that's where they'd be close to now. So this is tight. University of Melbourne have made up that gap. They're pretty much on terms here. We're looking just a bit behind the two crews, but I reckon their bows would be level. But don't forget, the final bend is going to favour the crew from Sydney University, stroked by Tiffany Botha, coached by Tom Lorich. And the Melbourne Uni crew, we should mention too, the veteran Sarah Hoare at 38 years of age in the 5-seat of the crew from Melbourne University. Another a Olympian, a dual Olympian whose international rowing career began back in 2005, so 20 years on, still competing at the highest level. But it is Sydney who just look to have made a move here once again on the crew from the University of Melbourne.
City beckons them in the background, coming round to the last slight bend to the left. Sydney, as you mentioned, have the advantage of the inside running on that bend. Look to have put about half a boat length on Melbourne at the moment, maybe 3/4.
Yeah, very strong surge here. So is that their race-winning move coming right at the end of the race? We saw University of Sydney men do it early in the race.
Shot down through the reeds, we'll get a much better line of sight. The Sydney inch their way down to the line, and it's a clean sweep. Fantastic effort. Bit of tactical brilliance there. That Melbourne, the crew started together. Sydney established a small advantage. Melbourne came back at them, certainly levelled up. And Sydney able to pull away around that last bend.
A great example of a match race, and that's certainly well scheduled too by the Australian boat race. They saved the best for last. That was a brilliant 3.2k match race down the course. Both crews led at various stages. We had clashing of blades. We had some side-by-side racing, and in the end, the margin of victory of just over a length. So University of Sydney will keep the Bella Guerin Trophy for a 7th consecutive year, and they're only one win now behind University of Melbourne overall. So a strong finish in the boat races here by the ochre-clad University of Sydney, although the college races have both gone the way of Trinity from Melbourne Uni. So well rode there. Melbourne Uni crew in second place. Right, so the win goes once again to the crew from the University of Sydney.
Yeah, and a fantastic spectacle. Really showing the beauty of match racing when you get two crews almost exchanging leads back and forth down the course, and the intricacies of what an open water river course offers in terms of advantages and disadvantages.
Yes, exactly. No, it's not quite the Darling Harbour finish of last year, but it's got its own unique charms, the Yarra, and a wonderfully protected body of water as they snake their way through to finish right here in the CBD. And you asked before, Brendan, how it feels at the end of a race. You can just see, even on that winning crew, that they are absolutely spent, the crew from the University of Sydney, and you'd expect that to be the case after such a close race as well.
Yes, they'll allow themselves to just drift down a little bit, some sort of recovery. I imagine it's a little more stressful emotionally as well when the other crew is up alongside you when you're trying to navigate arches of bridges and insides of corners.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about in these match races, especially with the winding river and much as the crews, I'm sure, are instructed just to focus on their own race in their own boat. There's so much going on around you. It's hard to do just that, but these crews have done so magnificently. So the crowds out here in front of the boat sheds, as well as one of our camera boats comes back. A shot of the Melbourne Uni Boat Club there to the right as well. A well-attended Australian boat race here on the Yarra. Thank you to our officials there, clad in green and gold. Our boat race officials have ensured safe and fair racing. David Grubitz and his team of officials on the water and off as well. And also, we did mention before, Life Saving Victoria. They should again for their work on ensuring the course remains safe.
expected this year.
Of course, for the women, as is Eleanor Price in the 2-seat, another NTC athlete in this boat, along with Alice McCready, Emily Shepherd, Stephanie Preller, Sophia Whiteman, a Queenslander from St Margaret's School originally, who now rows for Sydney Uni, and Olivia Natty in the bow seat as well. And that lead is starting to extend here, Brendan, for the crew from universities looking for their 7th win in a row in this event.
Yeah, Melbourne taking a good tight line. You can see the flag come into the shot there. Marshall's a little concerned with the proximity of the crews.
Yeah, he's warning Sydney now to keep out of Melbourne's way.
So both crews would have each other in their peripheral vision here. Really, it's inside a boat length. It's a fantastic thing from a spectacle point of view.
Absolutely, and really only 2 bends to go now. This next one will favour University of Melbourne, and then after Swan Street, it'll curve back to the left. So it's really all or nothing now for the crew in dark blue. I think they need to make a move around this corner to try and get themselves back up on terms with University of Sydney. And of course, the difference here, unlike the men's race, Brendan, is that both crews know exactly where the other one is. They will hear them, they will see them, they will feel them if the blade gets too close, and they really know that I reckon that the race could be won or lost in the next 30 seconds or so.
The last split we had, 9/10 of a second. The Sydney crew. From a tactical point of view, both coxswains looking around there. They'd be trying to remain relatively calm. Maybe they've got a little burst in the locker somewhere.
Yeah. No, they're moving heads is never a good thing to try and maintain boat stability, but at least if the cox is looking rather than the athletes, it's a better situation. So yeah, they'll be intensely aware of where each crew is, but the rowers themselves need to keep themselves focused straight ahead. And they'll want to try and cut this corner a bit more, I reckon, University of Melbourne, because at this stage, University of Sydney have maintained that margin. Blades again getting close together, and University has been warned again here by following officials. Yeah, Flotilla in behind them, in fact.
Melbourne on the right and the Navy. Slightly adrift of Sydney on the left. As you mentioned, those blades all but interlocking there.
Yeah, there was definitely a clash there, and that has, I reckon, cost a bit of time for University of Sydney.
Flag out. Is there any penalties that can be imposed, or it's more just we're trying to navigate both crews down the course?
Look, only in the event of a serious clash or collision, they may have to stop and restart the race. But look, in the event of a really serious crash, there could, I guess, be a disqualification. But that's very, very unlikely, luckily, and unusual in this sort of racing. Those who are fans of the Oxford and Cambridge boat race too, we've had a few good comings together in recent years, and a couple of race restarts as well on much wider section of the Thames, of course, around Putney in the early stages of the Oxford and Cambridge boat race. But these crews have avoided each other now, which they'd be wise to do, especially for the University of Sydney, because they just, from there, if they can hold their spot on the inside of the last corner around the judges' box, they'll be close. But University of Melbourne, this bridge is angled to the Swan Street Bridge, so don't take that as a defining marker on the course. It does angle across the river to the advantage of the Sydney crew. But this is close, Brendan. What a great finish coming up here.
This is the beautiful side of match racing. You mentioned the Swan Street Bridge. No further bridges to slide under. They're down a bend to the left, and they're on to the finish line. We get an idea of the speed they're travelling. Look at those cyclists in the background and some of the cars.
Yeah, around 20 kilometres an hour would be pretty much top speed for an 8. And that's where they'd be close to now. So this is University of Melbourne have made up that gap. They're pretty much on terms here. We're looking just right behind the two crews, but I reckon their bows would be level. But don't forget, the final bend is going to favour the crew from Sydney University, stroked by Tiffany Botham, coached by Tom Lorich. And the Melbourne Uni crew, we should mention too, the veteran Sarah Hoare at 38 years of age in the 5-seat of the crew from Melbourne University. Another Olympian, a dual Olympian whose international rowing career began back in 2005, so 20 years on, still competing at the highest level. But it is Sydney who just look to have made a move here once again on the crew from the University of Melbourne.
City beckons them in the background, coming round to the last slight bend to the left. Sydney, as you mentioned, have the advantage of the inside running on that bend. Look to have put about half a boat length on Melbourne at the moment, maybe 3/4.
Yeah, very strong surge here. So is that their race-winning move coming right at the end of the race? We saw University of Sydney men do it early in the race.
Shot down through the reeds, we'll get a much better line of sight. The Sydney inch their way down to the line, and it's a clean sweep. Fantastic effort. Bit of tactical brilliance there. That Melbourne, the crew started together. Sydney established a small advantage. Melbourne came back at them, certainly levelled up. But Sydney able to pull away around that last bend.
A great example of a match race, and that's certainly well scheduled too by the Australian boat race. They saved the best for last. That was a brilliant 3.2k match race down the course. Both crews led at various stages. We had clashing of blades, we had some side-by-side racing, and in the end, the margin of victory of just over a length. So University of Sydney will keep the Bella Guerin Trophy for a 7th consecutive year, and they're only one win now behind University of Melbourne overall. So a strong finish in the boat races here by the ochre-clad University of Sydney, although the college races have both gone the way of Trinity from Melbourne Uni. So well rode there, Melbourne Uni crew in second place. But the win goes once again to the crew from the University of Sydney.
Yeah, and a fantastic spectacle. Really showing the beauty of match racing when you get two crews almost exchanging leads back and forth down the course, and the intricacies of what an open water river course offers in terms of advantages and disadvantages.
Yes, exactly. No, it's not quite the Darling Harbour finish of last year, but it's got its own unique charms, the Yarra, and a wonderfully protected body of water as they snake their way through to finish right here in the CBD. And you asked before, Brendan, how it feels at the end of a race. You can just see, even on that winning crew, that they are absolutely spent, the crew from the University of Sydney, and you'd expect that to be the case after such a close race as well.
Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to the medal and trophy presentation for the 2025 Australian Boat Race. My name's Aaron McNaughton, I'm your MC for this morning. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung people whose lands and waterways we rode on today and pay my respects to their elders past and present. The Australian Boat Race, 155 years of history behind us here today. So it re-established in 2009 and we've competed, apart from the 2 years from COVID, on the Yarra River in Sydney Harbour, and we'll be continuing that tradition not only today with the boat race but with a cricket match on University Oval tomorrow. So rowing and cricket being the first two sports that we participated in these two great universities back in 1870, and we're continuing the tradition today. So we are here to celebrate the 8 crews that rode on the water today. And before we get underway, I just want to thank a couple of people very quickly. A lot of work goes into putting something together like today. And in particular, can I give a shout out to all the boat club volunteers that helped out. And also a special thank you to Alico Tunney from the boat club and to Ali McCauley from MU Sport, who have done a lot of work in all the operations in pulling today together. So well done to the two of them. All right, so we'll get the trophy presentation underway and we'll start off with the 2 college races. In order to present those trophies, I'd like to invite Melbourne University Boat Club President Minnie Cade up to the balcony. So Minnie is the president of the boat club, but also an alum of the university. She studied a Master of Business Administration and a Bachelor of Architecture. So give Minnie a hand once she gets up onto the balcony. Minnie Cade. Okay, so 2025 is the 9th time that we've run the college race, and the women's race in particular has been dominated by Ormond College. So they hadn't actually lost a college race up until today. Back in May though, Trinity College beat them out in the college regatta and earned the right to participate today. And Trinity College were the winners. So I'd like to invite up onto the stage their captain, Ali Campbell, Bachelor of Arts, to accept the trophy. Thanks, Ali. All right, the men's college race this morning was between Trinity College and St John's College from Sydney. The first time that the colleges have faced off against each other. The Trinity crew were looking to claim their 4th victory in a row, and they managed to do that. So congratulations to Trinity College, and to accept the trophy is Alex Leveny, Bachelor of Commerce student. Thank you, Ali and Alex. And also, please put your hands together for the crews from St Paul's and St John's, who raced fantastically as well. Okay, next we're going to do the presentation of the runners-up medals for the men's Australian boat race. I'd like to invite the captain of the University of Melbourne crew, James Horton, Bachelor of Biomedicine, to come out. Thanks, James. We've got a couple of questions to kick things off here. So it wasn't your day today, but what didn't go to plan from your end?
Well, kind of the whole race didn't go to plan, but that's okay. We had a good start, and I think we're all pretty happy with how we rode at the start. It's a bit difficult with the lane draw, but that's kind of the nature of racing on the Yarra, and it's all in a good spirit. So, overall we're pretty happy, and, it's a fun day, and yeah, it's all good.
Thanks, James. And I guess as a student athlete, you get support from a lot of different areas of the university and the boat club. Can you explain to everyone about the support that you get as a student athlete?
I've been super lucky to be surrounded by people supporting me, especially from the uni. We've got the elite athlete program that's helping me out with strength and conditioning. There's the scholarship program as well, so I'm very thankful for that. But there's been lots of support. If you're a student at U Melbourne and you're a rower, there's definitely a lot of people to go to and a lot of people wanting you to do really well. So I've been very thankful for everything that's I've received. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks very much, James. And now I'd like you to, if you can read out the crew name in order to come and accept their medals.
So we'll start with our bow seat. We have Charlie McClure, our X Factor. There he is. Jimmy Forsyth is our next one. There you go. No worries. Then we have James Simpson. Ethan Brown. Charlie White. Fraser Campbell. And then Josh Booth. There you go. Thank you. Sam Levine.
Thanks, James. And can everyone step forward just to the edge of the balcony and for a photo? Come a bit to your left. Thank you, James. Thank you, guys. Okay, and now on to the winners of the Men's Australian Boat Race. So I'd like to invite the winning captain, Jackson Kench, Bachelor of Economics and Advanced Studies from the University of Sydney, to the balcony. Come back. Yes. So congratulations on the win, Jackson. So the 10th in a row for the men's crew from the University of Sydney. That's a fantastic achievement. I guess, where do you think was the turning point in the race for you today?
Yeah, for us, probably that second bend definitely helped us there. Melbourne definitely came out with a good bit of fire, bit of power. So yeah, well matched through the first part of the race there, and then I think the young boys probably did what we spoke about before the race, and we stuck to sort of our guns and built the rhythm well, and carried on through the middle of the race and then back up. So yeah. And yourself and a number of from all the crews today have raced internationally and for Australia and in some other regattas. How's the experience of the Australian boat race different for you and for the student athletes? Yeah, I think I mean, racing for Australia is one thing, but getting to race for your club or your university is something a little bit different. So the Australian boat race definitely provides a pretty unique opportunity for Sydney and Melbourne. And obviously the heritage is there, so that's pretty special. But I think it's a good event that both unis should continue to promote, whether Melbourne or Sydney based, sort of alternating year to year or however we structure it. I think it's a good opportunity to showcase the unis and obviously a great chance for the athletes to represent their unis and the degrees that they're doing. Because obviously rowing takes up a certain part of your life, but studies and the other side is always very important. So the boat race gets to showcase that, and we get a great crowd, and families and supporters get to come out and give us a cheer. So it's always fun to come down to Melbourne and race here, and then up in Sydney every alternate year. So yeah, I think it's a great opportunity and something that both unis should definitely continue with and keep promoting.
Thank you, Jackson. I'll just grab that list for you. There we go. If you can read out the names for the athletes to come out and collect their medals. So Aaron, I'll just get you to jump up. We'll start from the bow. Finn Mitchell.
2 seat, Angus Mitchell. 3 seat, Will Gregory. 4 seat, Hamish Danks. 5 seat, sorry, Jack Carl. 6 seat, Gus. That's a hard one, mate. Silly Olka. This is Olka. 7 seat, myself. Park that one over there. And stroke seat, Will Rogers. And Cox, Jack McDonald. Thanks, Jackson. I'd like to invite Minnie Kay back out onto the balcony, please, to present the Sir Edmund Barton Trophy, named after Australia's first Prime Minister, and that's the Men's Australian Boat Race Trophy. So, Minnie, if you can come back out onto the balcony, please. I'm looking for Minnie. Minnie, presentation of the Sir Edmund Barton Trophy to Jackson Kench and the University of Sydney crew. And if you can step forward to the front of the balcony and just come up to the left a little bit here. Well, thank you, and thank you, Minnie, for presenting the trophy and the college trophies as well. Thank you. All right, I'd like to invite out onto to the balcony next to present the next lot of medals and trophy. Leonie Lum, Head of Sport from Sydney Unisport. Welcome, Leonie. My sheet flew away, so I'm doing this one by memory. So we've got, I'd like to welcome Eliza Gaffney, captain of the women's crew, to come out onto the balcony, please. Eliza, that was a very close finish. I think one of the closest finishes we've seen here. How did the race play out from your end?
We were actually pretty happy with the race. Past couple of years, we have been a bit behind on the Sydney Uni crew, so for us to race on our home ground and be up for a bid and just be super competitive, like, we're happy with it. Would have liked to have been over the line first, but there's always next year.
It was a fantastic race. So I guess yourself, you're studying a Juris Doctor. How do you go about balancing your studies by, I guess, studying something that is quite intense?
Well, it's not easy. I don't live in Melbourne right now, so I'm studying part-time and just trying to stay really on top of it with the recorded lectures and talking to the professors and just making it work, but super grateful for the support from Melbourne Uni and the Elite Athlete Program and the various scholarships that I've been very grateful to receive over the past few years have got me to where I am today.
Awesome, thank you, Eliza, and we'll get you to read out the names there. And Leonie, if you can present the medals, please. Oh, yeah, sorry, Eliza. Yeah, just go.
Romy Cantwell, Doctor of Medicine. Francesca Spano, Bachelor of Biomedicine. Layla Hucker, Bachelor of Science. Meg Cartwright, Bachelor of Science. Sarah Hoare, Bachelor of Veterinary Science graduate. Sarah Duray, Bachelor of Biomedicine graduate. Zara Lavery, Bachelor of Science. Hayley Verbunt, Bachelor of Commerce.
Thank you, and a round of applause for the University of Melbourne women's crew. Just step up to the front of the balcony, please, and a bit to the left. Okay, and now I'd like to invite the last captain, the winning captain of the Women's Australian Boat Race, Emily Shepherd from the University of Sydney. Hi, Emily. I guess that was a fantastic race out there. Plenty of experience in your crew. I guess, when did you feel that that race was won there at the end?
Oh, honestly, not until the very end. Like, it was back and forth basically the whole way. I think we just got lucky. We had the inside bend at the end.
And I guess from your perspective as well, the support that you get from the University of Sydney, can you, I guess, tell everyone a little bit about how you can do what you do as a rower?
Yeah, so the Sydney University EAP program is amazing. Like, rowing as much as we do, it's hard to study and meet deadlines and everything. So the support we get from them really makes what we do possible. So couldn't do it without them.
Awesome, thank you. There's your list of names. Leonie, if you can come out and present the medals as well.
Sure. Jamie Ford, Balsi. Jamie Ford. Sorry. Eleanor Price. Sophia Whiteman. Alice McCready. Steffi Prella. Olivia Natty. Tiff Botha. And Chloe Jaretta.
Please say the name.
All right, thank you, Emily. And Leonie, while you're here, I'd like you to present the Bella Guerin Trophy, named after the first female graduate from the University of Melbourne, to Emily and the University of Sydney crew. Yeah, if you take a couple of steps forward to the front of the balcony, and come to the left a little bit as well. Thank you, Emily, and thank you, Leonie. That concludes the formal presentation today. There's just a few thank yous that I'd like to mention before we wrap things up. So to get all 8 crews on the water today, I guess requires a significant amount of work. So please join me in thanking the coaches and support staff from all crews, including both boat clubs from Trinity College, St Paul's and St John's. The Australian Boat Race is a great way for our 2 university sport departments to connect and learn from each other. So firstly, thanks to Ed and Leonie from Sydney Uni Sport for their support and contributions to the boat race and for our thriving intervarsity rivalry. And to my colleagues as well from Melbourne University Sport, so Rod, Joe, Ali and the many others that were here today to support, organise and deliver the event. Well done. And next, I'd like to thank the 2 boat clubs. So a special thank you to Chris Knoll, Devlin and the Sydney University Boat Club, and to Minnie Alico and the team at MUBC, the MUBC volunteers who assisted today, and the many boat club members who support the club on and off the water throughout the year. There's also our race partners from today, so we couldn't have broadcast the event without Sportscast Australia, so thank you to them and to our 2 commentators, Brendan Parnell and Richard Dorstein. To 776BC for our Zoodies, all other club partners and sponsors as well. So on behalf of both universities, both sport departments and boat clubs, thank you for your attendance today in support of the 15th Australian Boat Race, and we look forward to continuing the tradition in Sydney next year in 2026. Thanks and have a great day. For those joining us for the post-race function up in the blue room, you can now make your way up the stairs